Welcome back to class, everyone. Let's just jump right in. In today's explainer, we are going to learn exactly how to construct a bulletproof, cohesive argument by breaking it down into 3 distinct building blocks. Think of your argument kind of like building a house. You wouldn't just start throwing up a roof without pouring a solid foundation first, right? Well, writing a persuasive paper works exactly the same way. We're going to dive into the source material from a damn good argument to really master this architecture of persuasion. But before we lay down that very first block, we really need to shatter a pretty common myth. A lot of folks think a thesis statement is just written once, set in stone, and then you have to defend it to the bitter end. But look at this quote straight from our text. Your thesis statement should evolve as you research, draft, and revise. Honestly, it's a living, breathing structure. It's totally normal and honestly expected that as you dig in and learn more, your argument is going to shift and adapt to that new information. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the evolving thesis, then cover claims of phenomenon, claims of evaluation, and claims of policy, before wrapping up with how to combine all those claims together. All right, part 1, the evolving thesis, finding your posture. Let's look at how your central argument actually matures over time. Think of researching your topic like walking into a crowded dinner party. You wouldn't just kick the door open and start shouting your opinions at everyone, right? You'd probably grab a drink, stand in the circle for a minute, and just listen. As you catch the rhythm of the academic conversation around your topic, your thesis will naturally adjust. You might tweak the wording, you might narrow your scope, or actually, you might change your position entirely based on what you find. That intellectual flexibility, that's the true mark of a strong thinker. Moving right along to part 2, claims of phenomenon, the foundation. Okay, so this is where we pour the concrete for our argument house. A claim of phenomenon asks one really simple but absolutely crucial question. Does this thing actually exist? It argues whether something is true, focusing strictly on a measurable but arguable happening. You are essentially pointing at something in the world and saying to your reader, look, this is happening. It's straightforward, sure, but remember, to be an academic claim, it still has to be arguable and worth discussing in the first place. Let's look objectively at an example straight from our source. Obesity rates correlate with higher rates of poverty. Notice how straightforward that is? It's stating that a specific, measurable phenomenon exists out there in the world. It doesn't tell you what to feel about it, and it definitely doesn't offer a solution yet. It simply lays the factual concrete that an observable relationship exists. And that gives us a really solid, objective ground to stand on. Okay, part 3, claims of evaluation, the framework. Now that our foundation is poured, let's start framing the walls. This is where we elevate our argument from just a simple fact to a deeply informed judgment. If the phenomenon says, hey, this exists, the evaluation says, and here is the quality or value of that thing. You're determining if something is better, worse, overrated, or valuable. But, and this is a big but, because we are in an academic setting, you can't just throw your personal opinion out there. This judgment absolutely must be backed up by evidence. I absolutely love the language shift here. On one side, we have the phenomenon, the measurable happening, which is kind of like a rigid ruler. On the other side, the evaluation, the judgment of quality, which acts a lot more like a scale, weighing value. We're actively moving from just observing reality to actually assessing its worth. It's the exact difference between saying, this car has a hybrid engine, and this car is the most efficient choice for daily commuters. Going back to that running example from our text, look at how the author actively evolves their argument. Now it reads, the healthiest nations are those with economic safety nets. The author is making a really bold evaluation about the quality of these nations by explicitly labeling them as the healthiest. We have officially moved past a dry correlation, and we're now framing a distinct judgment for the reader to chew on. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. You cannot just make an evaluation without cleanly defining your metrics. If you claim a nation is healthy, you've got to prove it. The writer has to establish a specific, undeniable metric for the word healthy, and then explore exactly how economic safety nets promote those specific healthful behaviors. You always have to show your work, lay out your criteria, and back up your judgments with hard data. All right, part 4, claims of policy, the action. We've got our foundation, we have our framing, now we are ready for the roof. If you want to actually change the world, this is how you do it. This claim does the heaviest lifting of the whole bunch because it demands action. It proposes a specific, targeted plan to directly address the issue you've been talking about. When you're reading a paper or writing one yourself, you can almost always spot a claim of policy by looking for one specific magic word: should. The second you see should, you know we're moving out of theory and directly into real-world action. Let's neutrally examine the source's final example here to see this in action. State and federal governments should create educational programs and establish food stamp benefits. Notice how remarkably direct this is? It's an actionable proposition directed at very specific stakeholders, state and federal governments. It's not just saying poverty and health are linked anymore, it is demanding a concrete action to solve the problem. And that brings us to part 5, combining your claims, the masterpiece. So the real secret here is understanding how to take these 3 isolated blocks and stack them together. Because honestly, in college-level writing, you rarely ever just use one. Look at how this sequence builds. Step 1, prove the phenomenon. You lay the foundation by proving the problem even exists. Step 2, establish the evaluation. You build the framework by setting your metrics and judging the impact. And finally, step 3, propose the policy. You put the roof on by demanding action. They all rely on each other. You literally can't put a roof on a house that has no foundation. Basically, this is our core lesson for today. You simply cannot demand a policy without proving the phenomenon exists first. If you just jump right to saying the government should do X, your reader is going to rightfully push back and say, wait, why? What is even happening to require that? These ideas have to overlap to create a unified, logical flow that walks your reader from the observable facts right through your evaluation all the way to your proposed solution. All right, class dismissed. Well, almost. Before you close out of this explainer, I have a quick homework assignment for you. Pull up your own essay draft right now. Look at your central thesis and ask yourself, what kind of claim are you actually making? Are you stuck just stating a basic phenomenon? Do you need to elevate it to an evaluation? Or are you ready to demand policy action? Figure out what building blocks you're using and go build a beautifully structured argument. Keep revising, and I'll see you in the next one.